No one ever questioned the silence. It had become part of the house, woven into the marble walls and high ceilings of the Benjamin estate like an invisible fog. Doctors came and went. Specialists whispered in private rooms. Checks were signed without hesitation. And still the silence remained. Benjamin Carter was once a man who filled rooms with laughter, a successful entrepreneur, a devoted husband, a father who never missed bedtime stories. Then one morning, he stopped responding. His eyes were open, his chest rose and fell, but the man inside seemed unreachable, locked behind an unseen door no one could open. The doctors called it complex neurological withdrawal. Some said it was stress. Others blamed rare conditions with names too long to remember. Each diagnosis came with hope and a bill. Millions were spent on treatments, therapies, machines that beeped endlessly but never changed a thing. Sarah Carter watched it all from the edges of the room. She had learned to sit quietly, to nod when doctors spoke, to fold her grief into something polite. Grief wasn't welcome here. It slowed decisions, interrupted progress. And progress, they said, was just one more treatment away. Trust the process, Dr. Thomas Reed would say, his voice calm, confident, practiced. He was the best. Everyone said so. He wore certainty like a tailored suit and spoke with the authority of a man who had never been wrong, at least not publicly. Sarah wanted to believe him. She needed to. Every night after the house went quiet, she sat beside Benjamin's bed, holding his hand, whispering stories from their past, their first apartment, their child's first steps. The way he used to squeeze her hand twice to say, "I'm here." But Benjamin never squeezed back. That was when Sarah noticed the maid. She had only been hired a week earlier. Quiet, observant, moving through the house like she didn't want to disturb the air itself. Her name was Lena, and unlike everyone else, she didn't speak in medical terms or rehearsed sympathy. She simply worked. One afternoon, as Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, exhausted by another meeting with doctors, she noticed Lena standing near Benjamin's bed, not cleaning, not adjusting anything, just watching. "Is there something you need?" Sarah asked softly, her voice sharper than she intended. Lena startled slightly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to overstep." Sarah sighed. "It's fine." Lena hesitated, then spoke again, her voice careful. "May I ask, how long has he been like this?" 18 months, Sarah replied. 18 months and millions of dollars. Lena nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving Benjamin's face. "And the doctors? They say it's complicated." Lena was quiet for a moment longer than was comfortable. Then she stepped closer to the bed, leaned in, and looked, not at the machines, not at the charts, but at Benjamin himself. 5 minutes passed. Then Lena straightened, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Ma'am," she said quietly, I think they're wrong." Sarah felt her heart stop. "What do you mean wrong?" she whispered. Lena swallowed. "I think your husband isn't unreachable. I think he's been trying to respond this whole time." Sarah stared at her, fear and hope colliding in her chest. After all this time, after all that money, what if the truth had been sitting in front of them all along? And if that were true, how many people had seen it and chosen to look away? Sarah didn't respond right away. Her mind rejected Lena's words before her heart could even consider them. Hope was dangerous. It rose fast and shattered hard. She had learned that lesson too many times in the past 18 months. "I've heard everything," Sarah finally said, her voice low. "Miracles, experimental therapies, promises. Please don't add another." Lena didn't argue. She didn't insist. Instead, she stepped back, clasping her hands in front of her like someone who knew her place in the world. "I understand," she said softly. "I won't say anything more unless you want me to." That should have ended the conversation, but it didn't. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Lena's words replayed in her mind, refusing to fade. "He's been trying to respond." No doctor had ever said that. They spoke of brain signals, damaged pathways, unresponsive systems, but never effort, never intention. At dawn, Sarah returned to Benjamin's room alone. The machines hummed as usual, steady and indifferent. She sat beside him, watching his face for signs she'd stopped believing in. Benjamin, she whispered, her fingers tightening around his hand. If you're in there, please. Nothing. Or so she thought. As she stood to leave, something caught her eye. A faint twitch near his thumb. So small it could have been imagined. Sarah froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She leaned closer. Do it again, she whispered. Nothing happened. Minutes passed. Her heart sank. She told herself it was stress, exhaustion, her mind playing cruel tricks. And yet the doubt had been planted, and doubt was powerful. Later that morning, Dr. Thomas Reed arrived with his usual calm authority. He reviewed charts, adjusted settings, spoke of patience and long-term care, like a man reading from a familiar script. Is there any chance, Sarah asked suddenly, interrupting him, that Benjamin is aware? Dr. Reed paused, surprised. Then he smiled, gentle, reassuring. Awareness is a spectrum, he said carefully, but meaningful response? Highly unlikely. Unlikely, Sarah repeated. Or impossible. Dr. Reed's smile tightened. Mrs. Carter, chasing false hope can be emotionally harmful. Emotionally harmful. Sarah nodded, but something inside her shifted. She watched him closely now, the way he avoided Benjamin's eyes, the way his hand lingered on the clipboard instead of the patient. That afternoon, Sarah found Lena in the laundry room. You said he's trying to respond, Sarah said quietly. What did you see? Lena hesitated, then spoke. I used to take care of my father. After his stroke, everyone said he couldn't hear us. But I noticed small things, tiny movements, patterns. Doctors missed them because they weren't looking for them. What did you notice with my husband? Lena's voice dropped. His eyes, they follow sound. And when you speak, his breathing changes. Sarah's chest tightened. Why hasn't anyone else seen this? Lena met her gaze, sadness flickering across her face. Sometimes people see only what confirms what they already believe. That evening, Sarah tested it herself. She spoke softly, then loudly. She played music Benjamin loved, and slowly, undeniably, his breathing shifted. His fingers curled, just slightly. Tears streamed down her face. If Benjamin was aware, then the question became unbearable. Why had no one tried to listen? And how many people had been paid to keep believing he couldn't speak at all? Sarah stopped sleeping. Once you see something, you can't unsee it. Every breath Benjamin took, every slight movement of his fingers, every shift in his eyes now felt intentional, alive. A message trapped behind layers of silence. She began keeping notes, times, sounds, responses. When she spoke alone, Benjamin's breathing changed more. When Dr. Thomas Reed entered the room, Benjamin went still, almost rigid. At first, Sarah thought it was coincidence. Then it happened again, and again. Fear crept in where hope once lived. Late one night, Sarah sat in the study surrounded by medical files she had trusted without question for over a year. Bills stacked neatly, reports filled with complex language and vague conclusions. She had signed everything, approved everything, and paid everything. She noticed something she hadn't before. Dr. Reed's name appeared everywhere, not just as the attending physician, but as a consultant, a reviewer, a partner in treatment facilities Benjamin had been sent to and brought back from unchanged. The realization felt like ice down her spine. The next morning, Sarah requested a full breakdown of Benjamin's care history. The hospital administrator hesitated, then stalled, then suggested she speak directly to Dr. Reed. That was all the confirmation she needed. When Dr. Reed arrived later that afternoon, Sarah was calm in a way that surprised even herself. I want a second opinion, she said. Dr. Reed's expression hardened, just for a second, long enough to notice. Mrs. Carter, Benjamin's case is extremely complex. Bringing in outside voices could confuse things. Or clarify them, Sarah replied. Dr. Reed sighed. We've invested a lot into this process. We, the word rang louder than any alarm. Sarah leaned forward. How much of what I've paid goes directly to you, Dr. Reed? Silence filled the room. That's an inappropriate question, he finally said. No, Sarah replied steadily. It's an overdue one. Dr. Reed straightened. I've dedicated my career to helping patients like your husband. Then help him, she said, her voice shaking now. Really help him. That night, Sarah made a decision that terrified her. She locked the door. For the first time since Benjamin's condition began, she asked the staff, including Lena, to leave the room. No doctors, no machines beyond the essentials. Just her and her husband. She sat beside him, tears blurring her vision. "Benjamin," she whispered, "if you can hear me, we're going to do something different. I need you to try, just once." She held his hand and squeezed twice, the way he used to. Seconds passed. Then, pressure. Light, deliberate, real. Sarah gasped, covering her mouth to keep from crying out. Her whole body trembled. "He's here," she whispered. "You're here." Benjamin squeezed again, weak but unmistakable. In that moment, everything fell into place. He hadn't been unreachable. He had been unheard. The next day, Sarah contacted an independent neurologist, one with no ties to Dr. Reed or his network. She paid privately, quietly, no announcements, no approvals. When the neurologist examined Benjamin, it took less than an hour. "He's conscious," the doctor said, stunned. "He's been conscious for a long time." Sarah felt rage and relief crash together in her chest. Millions of dollars, 18 months, and the truth had been hidden in plain sight. Now there was only one question left. Was Dr. Thomas Reed wrong, or had he always known? The independent neurologist didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize his findings or soften them either. He simply laid out the facts one by one, like pieces of a puzzle that should have been solved long ago. "Benjamin shows clear signs of awareness," he said. "His condition limits his ability to respond, but with the right approach, communication is possible." Sarah's hands clenched in her lap. How could this have been missed? The doctor hesitated. It shouldn't have been. That answer haunted her more than any accusation. Within 48 hours, Sarah removed Dr. Thomas Reed from Benjamin's care. The reaction was immediate. Calls flooded in, warnings, legal language wrapped in concern, suggestions that she was acting emotionally, irrationally, irresponsibly. She ignored them all. For the first time since the nightmare began, Benjamin's room felt lighter, quieter, honest. With Lena's help, Sarah began learning how to communicate with her husband, yes and no through pressure, breath patterns, eye movement. Progress was slow, fragile, but real. Each small response felt like reclaiming a piece of him that had been stolen. One evening, Sarah leaned close and whispered, "Did you know something was wrong with the treatment?" Benjamin's breathing changed. His fingers pressed once. Yes. Tears streamed down her face. "Did you try to tell them?" 2 slow squeezes. Yes. The truth landed hard. Benjamin had been aware of the doctors, aware of the tests, aware of the endless procedures that did nothing but drain time and money, aware and powerless to stop it. And Dr. Reed had been there through it all. Sarah requested a formal review of Benjamin's medical records. This time, the request couldn't be delayed. Lawyers were involved now. Independent experts combed through every report. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Tests that suggested awareness had been labeled inconclusive. Notes that mentioned responsiveness had been minimized or buried under jargon. Recommendations for alternative communication therapies were dismissed as unnecessary. And the money, always the money, flowed in one direction. Facilities linked to Dr. Reed, equipment leased from companies he consulted for, treatments extended without measurable progress. It wasn't a mistake. It was a system. When confronted, Dr. Reed finally dropped the calm mask he had worn so well. "You have no idea what it takes to maintain a reputation," he snapped during their final meeting. "Complex cases keep institutions funded, people employed, hope alive." "Hope," Sarah said coldly. "You sold me false hope while my husband screamed silently in front of you." Dr. Reed looked away. The investigation moved quickly after that. Licenses were reviewed, contracts frozen, questions asked that could no longer be ignored. But Sarah wasn't thinking about consequences anymore. She sat beside Benjamin, holding his hand, watching him relearn how to be present in a world that had moved on without him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I trusted them." Benjamin squeezed her hand, once gently. No blame, only survival. As the truth began to surface publicly, People asked Sarah the same question over and over. How did you figure it out? She always gave the same answer. A maid noticed what millions of dollars refused to see. And as Benjamin slowly found his way back to himself, one final thought refused to leave Sarah's mind. If Lena hadn't spoken up, how many others were still trapped in silence, waiting for someone brave enough to truly look? The room was quiet, too quiet in a way that made Sarah's heart race. For 18 months, the silence had been deafening. Now it was different. It felt alive, full of tension, the kind that comes just before something miraculous happens. Benjamin lay in bed, his eyes tracking Sarah as she moved around him, arranging pillows, adjusting blankets, humming softly the song he used to whistle on Saturday mornings. Lena watched from the corner, hands folded, every muscle in her body tense, ready to celebrate or console. Sarah leaned close. Benjamin, can you hear me? A long pause. Then, the slightest change in his breathing, deliberate, controlled. His fingers twitched, curling around hers. One squeeze. Yes. Tears pooled in Sarah's eyes. She held his hand tighter, whispering, I've missed you. I'm so sorry you've been alone in there. Benjamin's thumb brushed over her knuckles. Another squeeze. Stronger this time. He was trying. The days that followed were painstaking. Letters of the alphabet, words written on a whiteboard, yes, no questions. Benjamin was patient, methodical. Each small response was a victory, a bridge back to a world he had been cut off from. Then one evening, after weeks of silent practice, it happened. Sarah asked softly, Benjamin, do you want to speak? He paused, his eyes searching hers. And then, just one word, muffled and fragile, but unmistakable. Sarah. Sarah's knees buckled. She pressed her face against his hand, sobbing, laughing, screaming her relief all at once. He was there, fully there, alive, fighting, present, human. The doctor's expensive machines, the endless therapies, the millions spent, none of it mattered anymore. One maid's courage, one mother's determination, and Benjamin had returned. Sarah called Lena into the room. He spoke. He actually spoke. Lena smiled, tears glistening. He's always been trying. He just needed someone to see it. Benjamin squeezed both their hands, eyes shining with gratitude, understanding, and unspoken stories of months trapped in silence. Over the next few days, Benjamin's recovery accelerated. With careful guidance, he relearned basic speech, movement, and interaction. The world that had left him behind now watched in awe as he emerged from the darkness that had been forced upon him. When the media caught wind of the story, headlines exploded. $1 million mistake? How a maid saved a billionaire's life. But Sarah didn't care about fame or justice. Not yet. She cared about Benjamin, about the truth finally being seen. And yet, as she held him one evening, watching him laugh for the first time in 18 months, one thought lingered, heavy and sharp. How many more Benjamin Carters exist in the world? People trapped in silence, desperate to be heard, while millions are spent and the right answer sits in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to notice? Sarah didn't have an answer, but she knew this. Someone must. If this story moved you, kindly hit the subscription button on your screen and leave a love emoji in the comments and tell us, who do you think really failed Benjamin?